everything about our work continues to be impacted by the 4Cs: climate, COVID, conflict, and cost. Is our future in agriculture collaborative, or will it be catastrophic? Will it be creative? So let me introduce to you right now Alasdair MacLeod, who's the executive chairman of the Macdoch Group, Mary Shelman, the founder of the Shelman Group, Sam Trethewey, the co-founder and the managing director of the Tasmanian Agricultural Company, Jack Jacobs, Yindyamarra Research Fellow at Sturt University, and facilitating this conversation, Tim Hunt from Tim Hunt Consulting. This is the collision of the 4Cs. This is evokeAG.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a natural conceit to assume that the time that you live in is special, but we are going through a period of tremendous change in the global food and agricultural industry. We've been on this transition for some years now to try and improve the sustainability of the world economy that entails just the fifth great energy transition of mankind, alongside the need to decarbonise our industries. We're focused on that project, and suddenly we're hit by COVID, the worst pandemic the world's faced in about 100 years since the Spanish flu, that disrupted our supply chains and markets. It just felt like we're emerging from that, and Russia invades Ukraine, triggering the largest European land war since World War II, causing another round of disruption in world agricultural industries and exacerbating tensions already running high as relationships between China, the US and Russia recalibrate. This has triggered a cost wave that's been substantial through on-farm, right through supply chain, and certainly felt by the consumer. And we see today the worst inflation we've seen since the late 1970s. We need to talk about this. This is a big deal. We need to sort out what is temporary, what is going to have a lasting impact, what it means for us, and what we can do about it. We've got a great panel here to address this, and about halfway through the session, we're going to throw open these two microphones and invite you to join the conversation. Mary, I wanted to kick off with the conflict side of things. To what extent do you think what we're seeing in Europe is part of a localised and temporary phenomenon, and to what extent are we really starting to see a reshaping of geopolitics that will have implications for trade and investment?
So Tim, I think you just reached out to me first. This is a turnaround from when I first met Tim, which was at Harvard Business School, and he was sitting on one side of the student side of the table, and maybe I was on the other side of the table. So I think this is a turnaround. But you just started off by describing this transition that was underway, and then it's run here. When I think back to kind of the early 2000s. I mean, in the US, we were paying farmers not to produce, right? We had a world that was awash with grain, commodity prices were low, and then we hit that period around 2007, 2008, and I think we, with some kind of, droughts and other natural disasters, we ended up with a really big price spike. And that was a real signal to the world that, we have demand growing, but yet our ability to actually meet that demand, we have finite resources around it. Yeah. So it was a real wake-up call, and there were, tortilla riots in Mexico, and in Egypt there was, basically overthrowing the government based on the price of wheat and bread. So this transition started, and it was moving along, but I think, as you said, these last 3 years now have really intensified that issue. And if we goes back specifically to the conflict, which started, almost a year ago today, I remember watching the news, and you're thinking we're just coming out of, the last variant, the world's kind of getting back to normal. Oh my goodness, here's another thing that could possibly go wrong. I think specifically around the conflict, how that shaped things, it's just reinforced these issues around concerns about global food security, national food security, The need also kind of highlighted by global for resilience, more resilience in supply chains, multiple sources, not just for food to come in, but for inputs around that piece of it. And then I think there's the other piece around the conflict is one that I think is a longer term piece, but it's not so much talked about yet, which is the impact on cost. But a lot of the products that flows out of the region in the Ukraine, where those markets were for that, we're going into areas that are very food insecure.
Yep.
And so, populations that were already being challenged, now costs go up, can you get that? So impacts on populations in terms of food security, nutrition security in particular. So I think that, I think it's a temporary disruption. I think supply will come back, of course, to fill in those gaps. And, we're very resilient. But on the other hand, continuing to accelerate some of these other trends that we see in terms of the needs for technology solutions, the needs for greater resilience, again, diversified supply.
Yeah. It always strikes me that concept of building more resilient supply chains makes sense in itself, but it doesn't come for free. Right? There's a reason why global supply chains are configured as they are, which is largely, it's quite cost effective. I'm interested, Sam and Alasdair, as investors and primary producers, whether you'd be willing to pay more for more secure production of, say, farm inputs. There are people in the supply chain who are saying that we are heavily reliant on China for agrichems in particular, almost entirely reliant. We should be promoting domestic manufacture here. Probably going to come at some cost. Does it keep you awake, access to things like that? And would you be willing to pay for security?
You go. You can start, mate.
Is that for me? Well, look, I mean, I think the whole question about farm inputs is a much bigger question than security. And I think one of the things that I'm worried about, going back to the 4 Cs, is that I think we're tending to pretend that conflict and COVID are the only reasons why costs of things are going through the roof at the moment. And that is very much not the case. And I guess the thing that I'm most concerned about is this war that we've got on fossil fuels. Now, no one would like to see the world decarbonise more quickly than me. But the fact of the matter is, we still need fossil fuels for a lot of things that we do. We need fossil fuels for flying aeroplanes. We need fossil fuels for making cement. We need fossil fuels for making steel. By the way, we need fossil fuels for making wind turbines. So if we're going to shut down access to investment in fossil fuels, we're going to find it very expensive to make renewables as well. So that is a very significant, to me, that's a very significant cost that's here to stay until we've worked out how we can decarbonise a lot of these very important industries, including the manufacturing of farm inputs and fuel and all the rest of it. So I'm worried about cost on an ongoing basis, absolutely. Would I pay more for getting access to secure inputs? Possibly we're not going to have any choice. I'm more interested, though, in how we keep farming productive and profitable without relying so much on synthetic inputs. And maybe that's another conversation that we can have.
We're going to have it right here today.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I suppose we've actually moved strategically away from inputs into our business. We're a low input business from a beef perspective. And I don't know, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think, really farmers buy inputs on price, right? We're the second least subsidised agricultural economy in the world. If it wasn't for the road rebate that we get back in our diesel, would a farmer buy a local product for X amount over an imported product? At this point in time, I don't think they will. They buy on price, and it's and as exciting as the tech and data and information that kind of comes in from suppliers around that and market reports, the reality is I get Bugsy at my local farm supply store to call me, and he's going, mate, The price of steel goes up on Monday. If you want any gates, order them now, lock them in, and I can, keep your $15 a gate or whatever it may be lower on those input costs. And so I've got relationships around me. They don't want to see us have to pay more because they don't make any more money out of it. So yeah, so it's a bit of a funny one, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I definitely have seen since, from a conflict point of view and with the price of nitrogen significantly increase, hasn't affected our business at all. But I know we've got our own regenerative agronomist that works with us, and she's all of a sudden, her phone started ringing with more so dairy farmers really, because they use a lot of N, generally speaking, calling her saying, this regen thing, this organic-based fertilisers and whatnot, what's the go? And they're starting to kind of ask questions and look out of those kind of chains as well. So, yeah.
So Jack, if we don't invest in more secure supply chains and build up, to some extent, barriers to enable manufacture of things like ag chems, we are going to be relying on a good relationship with China in particular. I know that you're a keen student of geopolitics and history of them. How do you see our relationship with China playing out, and what can we do to avoid further conflict in that realm?
Well, Tim, I think it's dangerous to be in the business of prediction on things that are so unexpected and capricious like this, but I think there are some key things to keep in mind. The relationship with China that Australia and the West has is going to be the defining relationship of this century. This problem isn't going away. For a long time in the West, with following the fall of the Berlin Wall, we had a sense that there was a new liberal international order that could hold and prevent conflicts from breaking out once again. But as Mary has said, these things repeat themselves. They come back for us. And China is a part of that cycle. China has a sense of humiliation coming out of the 18th century at the hands of Western powers and a tenacious desire to recover its standing in our region. And Australia needs to come to terms with that. What do? We have to be very careful and very diplomatic. Mm-hmm. I think we need to find the points on which we need to take a stand on key issues that are in line with our values, but we also need to look for points of engagement with China, indeed points of healthy competition, to try and deheat the situation and take some fire out of the conflict or potential conflict. AgTech, this industry, is a key player in that, in trying to shore up the industry so that climate relationships with China can be strong and potentially see off any potential conflict that might come on down track. The other key point here too is that there's often a sense that government and foreign policy are only run out of foreign ministries. But I think that industries like the agtech industry have, a role to play in striking the diplomatic balance with China. We need to see how through trade relationships we can actually look at alliances with the rest of the world. And that's not just the United States and the United Kingdom, which should be key players. It's also thinking about Asian countries in our region and how through trade, through shared innovation, we can actually start building up relationships in our region that create a buffer zone. That takes the heat out of the situation down track. I don't know what will happen. I hope that we do not see conflict. But as Mary spoke to with Ukraine just this time last year, we need to be prepared and ready to be proactive in seeing off a potential conflict.
One clear area of joint interest is working on addressing climate change and establishing more sustainable food systems. Mary, what do you see in terms of the consumer end of the market? Are we seeing an inexorable increased interest in more sustainable, decarbonised foods? And to what extent does that differ in China to a market like the US where you're based?
Well, I think that, the consumer interest, one of the trends I've been talking about, 4 global trends, been talking about for, the past, 10 or 12 years, consumers, wherever they are in the world, doesn't matter if you're in Australia, Europe, US, or Kenya, are more concerned about their food. They're more concerned about how it's produced. They want more information around it. Now, what that information is and what their concerns are may be different. In Europe, maybe it's more about, the carbon footprint, maybe it's the water impact, maybe in China it's more still about food safety, but certainly their concerns about, kind of clean and green type of images. But I was just at a program, an academic program, a couple of weeks ago in Dublin, and there was a professor there from IMD, and he was very specific to the group of industry leaders, saying, you're living in a dream world thinking consumers are actually going to pay for this. Mm-hmm. There is zero willingness to pay at that level. So, but yet there's still value in it from the standpoint of, from the customer basis, the food company basis, this push to decarbonize. So maybe it's value to investors, maybe it's value to engaging employees. But he was talking about, we talk about what's a business case for sustainability. That's really not the right conversation to have. The conversation around sustainability is about license to operate, because unless you can, basically demonstrate to the area that you're in or to your consumer that you are on a path to a more sustainable production, you will either be out of their consideration set or maybe regulated out of business. And you look at Europe, kind of the pig industry in the Netherlands, restrictions that come in around it and said, we're just going to get out of this. We can't do it. We'll outsource that to somebody else. Yeah. I know conversations go on in New Zealand. US isn't quite there yet. So I think that, the issue around sustainability, we always think, being more sustainable, we need changes at the farm level. That has a cost, so who's going to pay for it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's not the consumer.
Right.
I'd just jump on that because so we've kind of gone, bull at a gate as we usually do, trying to build a beyond sustainable, we call it. There's nothing. I challenge many other farms in the beef space to do what we do. There are other people similar, but like we everything we can do to be as sustainable as possible. Even our packaging, we're vertically integrated. We've got 100% plant-based, zero polymer, food packaging for our beef, like the whole lot. And it's been, a bit of a harsh realisation as you get in the market and no one cares.
Well, they care.
Of course they care, but to your point, they won't pay for it.
But they won't pay for it.
And so the whole thing reminds me of the whole free-range egg thing, right? Like 70-something% of people think that you should, free-range eggs and they should flap their wings and walk around in grassy fields, but like still 62% of people buy cage eggs. So there's this real consumers say one thing and they do another, right? And so I think to Mary's point, definitely from an investor piece, license to operate, starting to challenge some of the greenwashing, which I think has absolutely plagued global agriculture, investor funds here and abroad. I think there's more of that needs to happen, and I think it does keep some certain affluent suburbs and people kind of comforted at night that farmers are out there doing the right thing. But really, when it comes down to putting $1 behind it, it's not their cost to bear. So, and then on that, without kind of digressing too much, I think one of my favourite sayings from the regen pace is if you don't pay for it, like the consumer doesn't pay for it, something in the supply chain does. Yep. So cheap food, it comes at a cost, and if the consumer's not paying that cost, the environment pays the cost. And I think we're seeing that increasingly now in Australia and around the world. Yep. That we're starting to see systems break down because we're just so focused on cheap food. Again, consumers aren't paying, so that's fine. Something has to, and it's usually the environment, animals, etc. that do. So.
Yeah. Is it part of a broader value proposition, Sam? Are you looking to produce something that has various attributes, including sustainability, that will enable you to ultimately unlock that value with the consumer? I presume you think that, or else why are you doing it?
Yeah, well, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and how long have you got? So I don't want to kind of go on too much about it, but there's a whole bunch of attributes to our brand story and what it is that we're trying to do, and the sustainability was a huge piece that we've kind of realised is perhaps it's important, but not maybe the defining kind of feature of the product. In actual fact, funnily enough, in a beef product, it comes back to consistency, eating quality, and price. Yep. That's what people, and they're happy to pay, a little bit more because it's a Tassie grass-fed, regenerative Wagyu product, so there's no problems kind of there. Yep. But yeah, this kind of idea that people are going to pay a disproportionately high amount of money because it's sustainable, and they shouldn't have to. And Alasdair and I, on our introductory call, agreed that in a beef system, I'd argue that it doesn't necessarily cost us more to produce beef like that either. It's this kind of fallacy that I think, like a conventional mindset has. Oh, it's more expensive, and to quote a certain person who's a leader in our industry on Australian Story a few years ago. Apparently regenerative farming systems are an inefficient way of producing food. This is the rhetoric that we're kind of up against, and it's just totally wrong and incorrect. So.
Yep. Alasdair, Sam's just mentioned there that the product has to be low price, high quality, consistent quality, as well as sustainable. Does that mean you have to be a really good farmer before you embark on trying to be a more sustainable farmer? Is this a bit like organics, that it's actually more difficult to do than traditional agriculture?
No, in a word. I don't believe so. But I think this whole question about sustainability is really important. And I think that the thing that we've got to recognise in this country is that we've got an enormous competitive advantage. We've got very innovative farmers like Sam. We've got very innovative industry bodies. Believe it or not, we actually have some quite enlightened government policy. I'll give you an example. We've had a carbon farming initiative in this country since, I think, 2011. There's countries around the world that would give their right arm for our carbon farming initiative. It's an extraordinarily good bit of policy. So there's a lot of things that we've got going for ourselves that's going to mean that when this new consumer drive for more sustainable products really hits hits its straps, we've got a great advantage in this country, and we need to be taking advantage of that. Now, how do we do that? There's a couple of things that we've got to get right. The first thing we've got to get right is we've got to be clear on what sustainability means. And clearly that is financial sustainability. It's clearly about environmental sustainability. And yes, it's clearly about the sustainability of our regional and rural communities. The tricky bit in all that is, what does environmental sustainability actually look like, and how do we understand how to make it better? And the first thing to say is, it's more than just emissions. Emissions are very, very important, but it's more than emissions. We need to be thinking about how we are sustainably maintaining biodiversity. What are we doing about soil health? What are we doing about water quality? These are all the things that we need to be thinking about in order to talk about our environmental sustainability. The good news is that the industry is talking about all this, and we're looking at how we can manage all this better. Now, the next point I'd like to make is that there's been a bit of, and Sam alluded to this a little bit, traditionally there's been a little bit of a question mark around whether or not farming in a way that's good for natural resources has to come at the price of productivity and profitability. And I do not believe that is the case, particularly when you look at the cost of inputs at the moment and what that's happening. I believe that there is a sweet spot between optimizing what's going on with your natural resources and what's going on with your profitability, and we really need to get our farmers thinking about how we get to that optimal point. And I should just say, little quick plug for the Macdoch Foundation. We've got a project going at the moment called Farming for the Future, which is a big research project that is looking at how you actually optimize that sweet spot between financial sustainability and environmental sustainability, because I think it's incredibly important, and it's going to be the most important thing to ensure that our industry thrives in the coming decades. Yep. Last point, and sorry if I've hogged the limelight a bit too much, the last point I'd like to talk about is data, because if we are going to hang our hat on Australia having the most sustainable ag industry in the world, then we've got to get better at data. Yep. And the reason for this is that we've just seen the Ag Minister, the President of the National Farmers Federation in Europe, talking up the sustainability of Australian agriculture. That's great, terrific work, it's important for all of us, but sooner or later someone's going to say, okay, Murray, prove it.
Yep.
And I'm afraid we're not quite ready to do that yet. Yep. So understanding how we get better on-farm data and how we can attach that data to our agricultural commodities is going to be very important. Yep. And that's where some of the conversations that have been going on in the last couple of days are so important, because technology is going to have to solve that problem for us.
Yep.
Technology is going to have to solve that problem in such a way that farmers can collect this data in a painless, seamless, and secure manner.
Yep. Okay. I want to just hold that thought bubble on technology and come back to it in a minute, and interject here Indigenous philosophy on this. Jack, you were chairing a panel yesterday that not all of us got to attend on Indigenous voices and roles in agriculture. What were perhaps the essence of what you took out of that in terms of Indigenous Australian thinking about what sustainability is and the role Indigenous voices can play in this quest?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Tim. It was a wonderful panel, and I think it speaks to a lot of the concerns that are already coming up on this discussion. What we're hearing here is that there's got to be a match between how government leaders and industry leaders think about what's really happening on the ground and drawing on that knowledge in an effective way to make sure that, you know, what the decisions are that are made at the top are actually meeting the realities on the ground. First Nations knowledge is what lives in between that gap. And that's what we heard on the facilitation panel yesterday. It's that there is a knowledge of country, of land resilience, of the intricacy of how we are bound up with environmental parts of our lives that First Nations brings to the table on questions of farming, on questions of innovation and production throughout the value chain. And I think that there is an opportunity here to listen to Indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples, about what does and doesn't work on the ground. Instead of kind of coming to the activity or farming or making government decisions based upon the economy, about how we think it should look. Instead, listening to them about their knowledge on the ground as they see it. There's a second key point here too, which is that when we're talking about cost, we're talking about innovation in industry. It's always linked to this idea of nation building. You know, First Nations peoples have such a strong sense of how the way that they engage with the land through farming or with native grains actually reinforces their sense of themselves as a culture and as a community. And the same thing stands for us as wider Australians too. You know, we've got to see that what we're engaging with here through farming and through industry is not just trying to get on the market chain through production. It's actually trying to build a sense of community in Australia and a kind of uniquely Australian brand that we can then export to the rest of the world. And that's important when we're thinking about potential conflicts. It's important when we're thinking about alliances and all the rest. So the key thing is First Nations lived experience on the ground, just like farming experience in the way that Sam is talking about, is there to be heard and listened to by leadership and by decision makers who want to make sure that we're getting it right from the top down. And two, these things are also linked to nation building and to building a sense of community and identity, which are really important too for just keeping people in the game throughout these massive changes that are going to demand a lot of responsibility and differentiation in their lives.
Mary, if we can bring together that powerful thinking and history and overlay that with technology that's coming our way, we're going to have a decent crack at decarbonising, improving sustainability. How much progress have you seen in the US with technology coming on farm and making a difference?
I think that's really the gap, as Alasdair was talking about, right? I think we have technologies that are very, very important and powerful. The big challenge is getting it adopted at the farm level. And, you know, so my father was one of the first people in the United States to actually work on bringing no-till farming, conservation tillage into Kentucky. So back in 1962, 1963. And still, you don't have widespread adoption around it. So I think it's this, you know, so there is progress being made there. The question is, how do you communicate that through the system? And there's two historic challenges in agriculture, right? One is the fact that, you know, if it's getting information on basically what the consumer wants or what the customer wants back to the farm level, and that's historically only come back in terms of a price signal, because that's the way information flows down the chain. It's just about price. We've just said nobody's willing to pay for this, so it's like very little signal to produce. And the second piece of it is related to that. It's like actually getting the financial incentives working back down the chain. You know, some of these, the adoption strategies that we're talking about, whether you're doing, you know, more rotation crops, whether you're doing no-till, whether you're doing data collection, so you can actually better manage the system, there's an upfront cost associated with that. but yet the payback on it, whether it's greater resilience in your operation, it takes a few years to get there, whether it's being able to go to the marketplace with data so you're able to plug into, say, a food company that's made commitments in terms of carbon or water or, biodiversity, so you can have, a longer term contract with that, whether it's to create a consumer brand. So, I think the challenge, as Alasdair rightly said, it's like, how do we manage this transition? And are there other, what are our levers around doing that to get these fantastic technologies out there actually working in the farm level and collecting this data? So, can you have preferential loan rates if, data is collected? Can you have, upfront payments to cover a transition period? Do you have a longer term contract that comes in rather than just, every year we're going to sell on an open market and it's just basically commodity? Is there like a value to a commodity plus a wrapper around that commodity that talks about how that particular product was produced? So maybe it's the emissions, it's the water use, it's the animal health standards, it's the genetics, it's the traceability of it all. But, and does that price in terms of just a product value, or can you actually have a model to where you have the product value plus the value of the information that goes along with that?
Yep. Okay. Sam, you stepped off the farm for a while, for some years, to work in the agtech startup world, came back to set up your current business. How much did you see technology change actually in the operation by the time you got back?
Not a lot. So it's quite interesting. 7 years ago, we started the first AgTech Accelerator program and worked with Artesian on the first VC fund dedicated to AgTech in Australia. And anyone that knows me knows that I was pretty obviously vocal and passionate about creating a huge spotlight on Australian AgTech and New Zealand and Australasian AgTech. And for a bunch of personal reasons, wanted to go back to production and had a baby and wanted to go home to Tassie. And so we raised capital and we've since bought 3 farms. We run 1,200 head on as many acres, and now we've got our own abattoir. And I suppose the big realisation to me is after 7 years since I started SproutX with a bit of a team, on the AgTech piece is, and I want to make this really, really clear, is where is it? Because you couldn't get anyone that understands on-farm AgTech any more than myself. I worked in it for 3 years, and my weapon of choice is Brian, who's 65. He's been on the farm for 40 years, and the data that streams out of his head is insane. And like, I use WhatsApp, we use Asana, we use a farm management software, not as much as we should. We use a bit of Gallagher because we use their hardware. Where is it? Got mates that run big dairies, 1,200 head a day, they milk. They don't use tech. There's a bit of software that comes out of their actual dairy platform where they milk their cows. I helped a mate build essentially an app through Google Sites, Google Sheets, and Google Forms. We had to hack up a bit of a solution for ourselves. Got over 50% of Australia's blackberry production literally on either side of my farm, Costa Group. My cattle walk around the berry tunnels, and sometimes they get a bit close. At $10 a punnet, it's you're over there on the quad bike pretty quickly, but. Anyway, and I talk to those guys, and they use a bit of tech, but ultimately, there's a company that's going to create huge efficiencies by putting technology into their farms, and they are playing with it here and there, but essentially, there's no major change. They've got mates in wool, got guys in grains, women and men in industries all over, and I've just probably reeled off the commodity groups there that are kind of the big parts of our agricultural GDP, and I'm telling you, it's not on farm. Like, it's not on farm. So I don't know if Australian AgTech's spinning its wheels or if it's a global thing. And I know that we come along here, we get very excited, but to be completely candid with you, there's a lot of people out there carrying around technology in their pocket looking for a problem to solve. And it's just the anecdotal evidence is that's not how we do it. So on farm right now, my problems cannot be solved by technology. My brain, my eyes, my feeling, my senses are still by far my greatest asset and that of my staff. And I also think there's an energetic side here that farmers traditionally connect with their animals and connect with our land, and technology removes that opportunity. Not to say technology is not important. We've got data sets coming out of our ears to prove our sustainability credentials. But I just wanted to make that really, really clear. As exciting as this space is, and I'm the first to say, it's not hitting the farm, and I don't think you can blame farmers that there's an adoption problem.
Yep.
There's a relevance problem.
Yep.
It's a nice to have. It's not a it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have.
Yep.
For some it's a want. I want it. But there's nothing. Yeah. So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and I can almost hear the producers nodding in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for raising it. And we are, in a minute, going to throw open 2 questions and comments. So if people would like to come down to the microphones, if you want to be first up, now's your chance. But I wanted Alasdair to ask you, how does that reflect on your experience? And is there much technology you've been able to deploy, and to what extent do you see technology as the answer in this space?
Look, technology is terribly important. Let's not pretend it's not. And you know, in our group, we spend a lot of money looking at technology and investing technology and putting technology to good use. But I'd like to come back to the point that you were just exploring with Jack, because there's something very important that we can learn from indigenous knowledge that we forget about at our peril. And the point about indigenous knowledge is they really value nature, and they really understand the importance of the relationship that we as human beings have got with nature. So while I'm a great advocate for technology, I'm also a great advocate for nature. Sorry, I've got...
So we don't need to
interrupt you,
I'm about to get Kevin Bridges doing one of your sketches in Glasgow, which that would not be very appropriate. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, nature. So I think the thing that we've got to get right is we've got to get right this balance between our reliance on nature and our reliance on technology. And if you can bear with me, I've got a couple of things to say on this, because I don't know if anyone else was a little bit taken aback by one of the opening sessions yesterday, because the guy that was giving it was a VC from New York. And let me just quote a couple of things he said. First up, Australia is a maverick nation with limited resources. Excuse me, what sort of Australia had he been shown? I mean, here we are with some of the most amazing natural resources in the world, and all he could think about was technology. He also said, when there's no further soil, don't worry, because we can grow our food in space. Well, what's the point of spending trillions of dollars working out how to grow food in space when we can spend a fraction of that looking after our soil? Third thing, he said, technology is secondary to humans. Okay, I agree with that. But where does nature come into that discussion? So this balance between technology and nature is really, really important. And just to put this in perspective, a bit of a history lesson. In the middle of the last century, the agricultural industry fell in love with chemistry. After World War II, we ended up with a surfeit of nitrogen manufacturing capabilities. So we made a lot of synthetic nitrogen. Magnificent boom in agricultural production after that. The price of food went down. In the developed world, the price of food went down in the developing world. Saved countless people from starvation, ensured an economic boom in the West as food got cheaper and all the rest of it. No doubt about it, you know, the onset of synthetic nitrogen was a great boom, but it came at a cost. And we're just beginning to understand what that cost is, because we're now beginning to worry about emissions. We're beginning to worry about biodiversity, we're beginning to worry about soil health, we're beginning to worry about all those things that I was talking about earlier on that are leading to creating a truly sustainable agricultural industry. Mm-hmm. So yes, technology is great, but we've got to be very careful that we don't over-rely on technology and we don't think that technology is the only answer. Keep thinking about nature.
Yep. Okay. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to approach the microphone and ask a question or make a comment should you wish to join the conversation. Please, we have the first one here.
So just with, to Mary probably, just to see the difference in America, the disparity between the farmers that are always on farm, not getting the access to the technology, and then we see the ones on the coastal, they're more accessible to industry that's here today. How can we lift up those other producers that aren't in the room today, the ones that are busting their ass out the back there, and to improve them? Is it technology to get them across that line to be sustainable? Can they measure their carbon credits in the end, or where's the starting point for those producers?
Right, I think that's a great question, and some of it is actually, it's, you know, you often hear from the tech providers, wow, it's just farmers are slow to adopt, right? You know, they're just not doing it. But you look at technologies that have actually have had a big uptake in farming, and in the US you look at genetically modified crops. I would say that the technologies that actually lead to an improvement in quality of life can have a much faster adoption than ones that are just about, let's generate more data, that now we're actually overwhelmed with it. It actually degrades my quality of life because now I'm in angst because I have no idea what to do with this and I paid for it. If it's really challenging, I think, sitting at all levels here. And part of it is I think the solutions aren't fit for use yet. So, you know, it's like, one of the things I've noticed, I think, about Australia, there was a comment yesterday that somebody said that, you know, it's kind of, Australia kind of leads in ag innovation. And, you know, think about the US, you know, a lot more, you know, startups, innovations, things. But it strikes me here that more innovation actually kind of is growing off the farm. You know, big operations, something that's actually developed because it's practical, it helps me run my operation better, and now we're going to, you know, to take it forward. You know, that to me is a more legitimate kind of solution than this top-down, oh, I'm a developer in Silicon Valley, and, you know, I'm going to give you an app that does this or this or this, and they're just so complicated to there. The other thing is, you know, there is this gap, right? So how can incentives be provided? So everybody says, you hear it all the time, like data's valuable, right? The companies say it, we need data, we've made this commitment, we need data on production because it's going to help us be in our, you know, meet our commitments, whether it's emissions or water. If you hear the, you know, the genetics company, the chemical company saying, well, we need your data so we can deliver better products. Well, if data's valuable, farmers should be paid for the data. And that then provides an incentive, you know, it's an extra revenue stream that comes up to use it. So it's trying to manage this gap between doing something today that requires not only a cost, but a change in practice, which is another cost, may actually require a different set of equipment. You know, in the US, it's like, well, here, you know, specialty crops, you know, cover crops. Well, my equipment is designed to do X, I'm not designed to do Y. And by the way, my labor situation particularly doesn't allow me to do all of these additional activities that you're now doing. Because in the US, I think labor is the most constraining piece that we have. That doesn't matter if you're along the coast, you know, producing berries or leafy greens or something in the field. But in the middle of the US, I was at a conference back in early January. It's like we can't get sprayer drivers, we can't get truck drivers, we can't get tractor drivers. This is not attractive. They've all been sucked out into these other industries. And so, you know, technology that actually addresses those very immediate problems gets much faster uptake.
Yep.
And coming back to my example about, you know, kind of the uptake of, say, Roundup Ready soybeans in the US, when they first came up on the market, there was actually a yield drag. And everybody looked at this and said, hey, you know, farmers are never going to adopt. And it was a super fast adoption because it made the farmers' lives easier. When my dad grew no-till soybeans, they were super hard. There's always weeds. You had to be out there every day. You had to manage it. With the adoption or the introduction of no-till soybeans or Roundup Ready soybeans, it suddenly became soybeans for dummies. You know, anybody could grow soybeans because it was just this very simple formula of going out there, and that freed up the farmer's time to go do many other things that they were having to, spend on this particular crop. Yeah. So I don't know if that helps, but I think that is, the gap you talk about here is a gap that exists every place. Yep. So, and we need industry solutions if we're ever going to get this extremely valuable technology out and make the system work. And to do, the other piece I'd say around Alasdair's piece is, I think we need to do our accounting differently. So much in the US, you talk to a farmer, it's like, oh yeah, here it's always about, yield per acre. How many bushels per acre did I grow? How much weight did I gain per cow? It's like, no, I want to know what the enterprise value is, including, the fence rows and the biodiversity and the water and, whatever kind of, maybe there's a positive tourism value around it.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of counting, I just want to check on the counting here. I've got 20 minutes on the clock here and a sign saying 5. Are we getting 5 out of 10 or what's the sign for? No, we have a question there. Is there 5 minutes?
Sorry.
Thank you.
John Young, I'm a grain producer from Western Australia. And I just want a quick response to Sam about when he mentioned about the ag tech. Look, we do adopt ag tech, I think, Sam, especially in West Australia. We have got variable rate on all our machines. Every product that goes out the door, the chemical, fertiliser and seed, is all variable rate. Everything is sent to the machines wirelessly. All the data, the yield mapping is coming back wirelessly. Our staff enjoy using that technology, and it's an amazing thing that lowers the cost. And in Western Australia, it is really, really being adopted.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sam was kidding slightly when he said he doesn't use technology. Of course he uses technology.
Yeah, we use heaps of technology. I completely agreed. I've sat on spray rigs, spraying out cotton crops up at Gundy, all variable rate. Don't get me wrong, stuff that comes in tractors and hardware, absolutely. It's not that farmers don't use technology. I think what I was kind of referring to is and to touch on Alasdair's, comments around, old mate yesterday is the startups. So, John Deere and Hardy and all these businesses, Fendt and Case, they've got all the tech, I totally get it. And we do use it. I use it. We use Trimble, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the startup VC-focused culture in ag tech is on farm, sensors in cows and sensors in field. Like, we got a weather station, but yeah, so I think I totally agree. We have to absolutely use tech, but it's just, I think that there's a lot more hype and carry on, and has been for quite a long time, and we're still yet to see a lot of this stuff take place. Like, I'd say over 70 or 80% of the tech that I saw pitched to me in 2 years' time in Australia and New Zealand 7 years ago hasn't seen the light of day. Mm-hmm. So.
Can I just add something to that, Tim, really quickly?
And then we'll get to question 3. Yes, please.
I just think, if there's anything we can learn from the First Nations experience here, in respect to what Sam's saying, it's that the technology needs to suit the human beings, not the human beings need to be suited to the technology. So if technology enhances the way that work is already being done, then something's right. And I think it's important for all of us, no matter in which way we are concerned here, to approach this sort of work with the humility. The kind of lived experience that you have on the ground, which has been years and years of learning, is something that we need to treasure and cherish. And the technology which we actually create and control the ethics around needs to respect that and serve that, just to draw on the First Nations experience in light of what Sam's also saying about farming. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have a question up here, number 3, please.
Yes, good morning. Maybe if you could indulge me a bit, I'd like to add a 5th C and get your comments, given the conversations around technology and uptake, etc., and that is cyber security. Does the panel have a view or comment around the potential for cyber security when it's deployed at scale across a lot of farms, in a lot of machinery, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Look, the only thing to say about that is that data security is incredibly important, and we've got to do everything we possibly can to ensure that it's not misused. And look, I can't tell you what the answer to all that is, but it's just something we've just got to make sure happens.
I was chatting with Pete McCann yesterday, who has just resigned 13 years as the marketing manager for Case IH, and him and I were having a chuckle. He's like, you've got farmers worrying about their data that comes out of the tractor and, yield maps and stuff like that. And, we want money for it, or worried about it going somewhere, yet, they click every little tick box on their iPhone and they give up their bank details, the whole hog. So I think there's a real double standard when it comes to what we're actually giving up and selling and whatnot. So, but as far as a broad brushstroke, I don't have the knowledge to comment. So.
While we wait for the next question, I wanted to pose to you, in particular, Sam and Alasdair, what do you want to see in terms of enabling technology to better meet your needs, to be more applicable? What is the gap there that you think needs to be filled?
I think one of the biggest things with ag tech is the people that are experiencing the problems aren't developing the solutions. So if you think of really well-known startups that fill the little tiles on your phone, a lot of those people that set up those businesses actually experience the problem themselves. So I think in ag tech we've got a bit of a situation where I'm farming because I want to farm, not necessarily means I'm a really effective startup founder that can raise capital, and all the things that come with that. So there's a little bit of a thing there, but I'm also really questioning is, everyone's very obviously focused, and I think in some ways one-eyed by technology. Is it our greatest distraction in Australian agriculture or global agriculture right now? Natural capital accounting, indigenous things, connecting back to land, connecting back to country. We're facing the issues that we're facing on climate, not because we don't have enough technology. It's because we don't understand how ecological functions work. I'd argue a lot of farmers don't actually understand carbon, nitrogen, water cycles, how the ecology of their actual little plot of land, their little patch of dirt that they've got at that point in time, in our 4.54 billion year history, that they understand all the workings of every single species, both below the ground and above the ground, and how that works. So we have an ecological problem, we have an environmental problem, we have natural problems on farm right now, and I don't think technology can solve natural problems. Natural solutions are needed for natural problems, ecological solutions are needed for ecological problems. And I think ecological literacy, both in the investor community and on farm and through the supply chain, is going to become increasingly important. And where Alasdair is starting to spend time is working on natural capital accounting, and Mary touched on it as well, is getting away from just talking about silver bullets like carbon and starting to account for biodiversity, ecological function, and how that all works. So I'm quite excited, and as you can see, passionate about this and where this is starting to go. But I do pose the question, is tech a distraction right now? Because I look at the problems that I face and next generation, and it's actually ecological sustainability of farmland and of food supply. And tech will no doubt help and provide a bit of data along the way.
Yep.
But the fundamentals don't lie in tech.
Yep. Okay, we have a question up here, and then we'll go to the one there. Thank you for your patience. Please.
Hi, Rob Barrel, beef and lamb producer here in South Australia. We love the fact that as farmers we get to keep all our data or check data, and there's a whole lot of billions of dollars going into research and development. It's great. But how do we correct the infrastructure problem we have in this country when I'm on my farm in the middle of a fire and I have absolutely no services, never alone wanting to chase cattle or do anything like that? A comment, suggestion would be great.
Anyone from Telstra here? Sorry, can't help you. I mean, look, agree with you 100%. We need to get better coverage. Incidentally, we just got Starlink on our farm, and you think of the billions of dollars that was poured into NBN, and we used to get our internet from NBN satellite. Starlink just knocked it to the dead, in 5 seconds. So, it's a huge pity because a lot of our money went into building NBN, but then along came Elon Musk and just built something 1,000 times better in half the time, and as far as I can work out, for 1/10 of the cost. So, I'm sorry, that doesn't answer your question, but can you not get Starlink?
Not yet.
Really? Okay. It's great. It's fantastic, and 1,000 times 1,000 times better than the NBN.
Yeah. I might just say, I think that was, if there's a silver lining to COVID, it was around this acceleration of basically this, kind of going to more digitization and the need for, in the US, it's about, the lack of rural broadband existing in the same way, cell phone service, anything like that. And suddenly with, everybody needing to go online, it just pointed out this huge need, and now there's infrastructure dollars that are flowing into that. But as Alasdair said, it's actually the leapfrog solutions, I think, that's where technology is super valuable, right? It was, you looked at, areas that in the world that, maybe didn't have landline phones, they immediately went to cell phones. I think now, being able to, have the satellites there and have that information. And of course, that's the backbone for all of these, data collection and, management things that we've all been talking about that do have value, maybe not just value in the way that they're seen by the investor community as having value, but actually the real value that's created is a different type of value from that. Yep. And it may not be, that value actually may not be possible to be captured by the investor or by the, the startup founder themselves. Yep. It doesn't mean that they're not really important.
Yep. Please, question from the front here.
Hey guys, so I'm a grain grower from here in South Australia. And if I take my farmer's hat off and just walk down the street, I'm going to pull my iPhone out. I've got multiple apps on my phone. I'm probably too tight to pay more than $2.50 for an app. But you've just got so much connectivity at your hands, whether it's Google Maps, you can collaborate on OneNote or using Google Sheets, all that kind of tech. And obviously there's some massive companies that are supplying this tech for free. They've got to pay the bills. So do we need to rethink some forms of ag tech and maybe we don't have critical mass to supply some of these things? So for instance, you've got AgWorld that charge $2,000 a year to record spray records. Well, you can do it on OneNote for free. This data is worth a lot somewhere. Do we need to rethink the way we manage all this? And just interesting to hear some of your thoughts maybe.
Mm-hmm. So can I take that one, Tim? I think the first thing to recognise about your data is that the person that it's most important to is you. And the way that you use that data to make better decisions about how you run your farm. So yes, there's going to be lots and lots of other reasons for why on-farm data can be used for, better financial solutions, better supply chain solutions. But the most important thing about the data is how you use it and how you use it to make better decisions on your farm. Now, how you collect it and how you store that in a way that is really usable for you, those are the solutions that I hope some of the technology companies are coming up with. We develop a bit of technology within our group too, and the way that we look at it is we say, right, well, this data has just got to be collected in a seamless way as part of our day-to-day activities. So that then therefore becomes painless in terms of collecting it. And then you've got to, someone at the back there has got to develop some decent software to ensure that you can use that data to help you make better decisions.
Yep. Okay. We've got 3 questions.
And sorry, that's worth paying some money for. I don't know how much money it's worth paying for, but it's worth paying some money for because it will help you run a better business.
Yep. Okay. Got 3 questions in the queue, and then I think that will run our time out. Number 3, please, was first.
Yes, thank you. Look, I was going to support our colleague from Western Australia about the variable rate technology, and we do have it here in South Australia. But it is a real game changer in that it not only saves us money, but also makes sure that we're not wasting inputs on hectares where it can't be utilised. But look, we're doing the same with the sheep industry as well. With EID, every animal is treated on its merits. We can ensure they're getting just the right amount of input to have a long and healthy and productive life. Doing a lot of DNA testing also to make sure animals are getting a long and healthy productive life. I get a text message on my phone if I've got a leaking trough. The tech has been a game changer for us as an industry. It's been really great to see. When we get home from this, we need to make sure we analyse the tech objectively and we don't do it for the fun of it. As Sam said, there's a lot of tech that you can put in the shed that doesn't actually pay its way. But no, it's a great conference and I get really excited about the tech.
Okay. Thank you. We might leave that as a comment and come down here the front, please.
Thank you. Great panel session. I think bringing forward kind of some of the realities that agriculture and the tech industry are facing has been excellent. I'd like to add a sixth C without labouring things, and that's capital. Agriculture historically has had kind of variable access to capital. I think in recent years, the banking sector has become a bit more consistent for farming and for supply chain actors. But if I think about the tech industry today and what the entrepreneurs need to deal with in terms of the variable appetite of the venture capital system for what they're doing, it's like a warm Adelaide breeze one day and it's like a cold Christchurch easterly the next. And I think that's incredibly challenging funding environment for ag tech to operate within. It's not just ag tech I listen to it, I think it's all techs and all startups have to live in this world. But it'd be interesting to get the panel's view on how they see access to capital being a driver into the future, and to help the ag tech startups bring forward viable solutions. It's not easy, it takes a lot of funding, and dealing in that volatile environment is incredibly difficult.
Okay.
Maybe I just should make, if I could just, maybe kick it off here, because I think there is still a tremendous amount of capital now flowing into the ag tech space. It's just a bit of the investor kind of reality about, wow, it is really hard to get things adopted on the farm. So maybe that throttles down a little bit and more expectations about return. But then you look at the technologies in terms of, precision fermentation, cultivated meats, indoor farming, the greenhouse production that we see, going in different places. Those are still really attracting a lot of capital and increasing amounts of capital there. So I think, one thing that we haven't talked about here is that, you have technology that comes and it makes the way that we farm today better, so we can basically do more with less. We have technology that comes that means that we can do things differently on the farm and respond to different concerns. But then there's technology that's coming in that either want to do away with farming, either because you're going to change what people eat, and go to all plant-based products, or you're going to produce what's on the farm today, but do it in a completely different way through a fermentation facility, through a cultivated meat facility. And those are, impacting what's the future. Precision fermentation is a closer future than, say, cultivated meat. Yep. But I think, kind of thinking about those pathways to sustainability that are being talked about, they're all highly relevant. We need them all. Yep. But it kind of changes the dynamics of the industry, and the capital is still really flowing into some of these areas and maybe not so much into the others where we maybe have too much technology.
I'm going to just, Alasdair, honour this gentleman who's been waiting for some time. A quick question and a quick answer from the panel. We have 1 minute 27.
My question is, Sam, you're obviously quite passionate about regenerative farming and the value of sort of producing nutrient-dense food. You sort of said the farmer and you've got a very niche that are willing to pay for that nutrient-dense food, but I suppose, do you think there'll ever become a time where government will actually recognise that the flow-on effects for the health benefits of nutrient-dense food, and whether there'll ever be, subsidy or support around those producers that can produce that type of food?
Got it. I hope so. And sometimes I'm not filled with a lot of hope. And listening to Zach Bush and people like that, it's amazing to see what's happened in the US specifically with their food systems and the impacts on human health. And it's easy to build hospitals for children with cancer that are affected by linkages to our food system as opposed to it is to fix the actual food system. So again, so I hope so, mate. And I think also the proof will be in the pudding. And we're actually in the process of testing product right now to show trace elements, mineral nutrient density over others, and of course we'll start to try and lead as others will in proving that, because consumers don't realise that there's a difference. So.
Right. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the panel for joining us this morning and really challenging, I think, our thinking on a number of these concepts. The conversation continues in many of the sessions to follow. So please follow up on themes including SynBio, brand ag with Mary, offshoring, onshoring, friendshoring. This is an ongoing conversation. Stays with us. Thank you very much.